Never before in the history of planet Earth has a member of its ecosystem had the potential on such a grand scale to both create and destroy. On a collective level, our industry, culture, and community is something to behold. Never in the 4.5 billion year history of our planet has innovation like ours been achieved. But there is a dark side to our success, one that most of us remain ignorant to. This is the fact that our gains have come at an unthinkable cost to the other species that live here, as well as the Earth itself. From deforestation to overfishing, air pollution to hunting animals into extinction, our dark side is evident around the world. On an individual level, the effects of our way of life are also felt abroad, but are much more likely to be dismissed as acceptable because of how small of a scale they're on. Nothing could be further from the truth. And the most common example of this is littering. It is said that the first step in solving any problem is admitting you have one. This is especially true when it comes to littering. I think anyone would admit that humanity itself has a littering problem. But let's just come right out and admit that every single person, including you and I, has at some point or will at some point, to some degree, litter. Now, most of the time, this is done accidentally, but the effects are the same. It makes no difference to the vast amount of animals that die each year from eating litter, if it was put there purposefully or not. We must take responsibility for our actions. The bad news is, until we do, this trend of pollution will continue. But the good news is, there is a solution, and we can change, starting right now. We've already made a good start by making recycling services available to most areas in the U.S. But this alone is not enough. Many households and businesses still do not recycle their waste. Consider this. According to greenecoservices.com, 55 billion used aluminum cans weren't recycled and were either sent to landfills or discarded to wind up as litter polluting our world. But here's the kicker. Had those cans been recycled properly, they would be worth $1.2 billion. If you want your piece of that money, simply take your cans to the recycling center and trade them in for cold hard cash. The benefits of recycling instead of producing waste are evident, but it's natural for some people to resist change, especially when that change is inconvenient. After all, the biggest problem with recycling is that it's easier to just throw it all in the trash and let the trash man rid you of the burden. But let's take a step back and be absolutely clear about one thing. If you do not recycle, you are littering. Even though most of your trash will wind up in a landfill, when an animal gets into your can overnight, or when it gets dropped off the back of a trash truck, or when it gets blown around in the landfill, it then becomes litter. Now you might be thinking, the amount of your trash that winds up as litter is probably pretty small. And the truth is, you're right. But let's scale that up by the amount of people that send their trash to the landfill. And if you do that, now you have a very dire problem. To give you an idea of how bad our littering problem is, consider this. According to staticbrain.com, if you were to weigh every single man, woman, and child on Earth at once, humanity itself would weigh about 316 million tons. But the amount of litter that enters our oceans equals 9 billion tons. As if that wasn't bad enough, that's 9 billion tons every single year. Can you imagine the devastation that must cause to our wildlife populations? Every year, 1 million birds and over 100,000 marine animals, such as turtles, die each year from eating litter, according to WDCS.org. The only time humanity suffers losses on this scale is in times of world war. I wonder how outraged we would be if we were losing humans at that rate. Make no mistake, the biggest threat to these animals' survival is us. We cannot allow this to become our legacy. We must not allow wildlife to continue suffering because of our litter. We can fix this. One of the best things we can do to improve this situation is pick up more litter than we generate. We can do this first by being vigilant on making sure we don't accidentally or purposefully litter. And then once we have that under control, we can commit to picking up litter when we see it. It's pretty simple. It is imperative to take littering seriously. This is an especially tricky problem because it's a large-scale problem that disguises itself as a small-scale issue. We must all play our part to clean up the environment. We all must refuse to litter. Now that you're informed about the problem, from this moment on, you must choose. Will you be part of the problem or part of the solution?